Commander Varric Thorn stood on the bridge of the UES Relentless, watching Earth shrink to a blue speck on the view screen. His weathered face, scarred from the Velgarian conflict, reflected the grim determination of humanity's last warship. The transmission had been clear: surrender or die. The Galactic Coalition had made their final demand. "Status report, Lieutenant Keza," Thorn asked, his voice steady despite the weight of 6 billion lives resting on his shoulders. Lieutenant Imara. Keza, her dark eyes fixed on the holographic display, responded without looking up. "Coalition Armada holding position at lunar orbital distance. 73 capital ships, Commander. Energy signatures indicate weapon systems powered and ready." Humanity had joined the galactic community only 30 years ago, greeted initially with cautious optimism. But as Earth's corporations expanded into space, as human innovation began outpacing millennium-old alien technologies, that welcome had cooled to suspicion, then hostility. "And the evacuation?" Thorn asked. "Seed ships launched successfully. Colony vessels Endurance, Horizon, and Defiance have activated their stealth protocols and departed on divergent vectors. At least some would survive. 3 ships carrying 50,000 colonists each, the bare minimum to ensure genetic diversity. Hidden among the stars, they might keep humanity from extinction. Admiral Orn Dravex of the Coalition forces had given Earth 48 hours to submit to protective oversight, a euphemism for complete technological regression and permanent alien governance. The Coalition claimed humans were too unpredictable, too adaptable, evolving too quickly, a destabilizing force in the galaxy. "Incoming transmission," announced Communications Officer Ravek, his fingers dancing over the console. "It's Admiral Dravex." The alien's face materialized on screen. Slate-gray skin, 6 eyes arranged in a hexagonal pattern, mandibles clicking in what humans had learned was an expression of contempt. "Commander Thorn, your deadline approaches. Has Earth reached its decision?" Thorn straightened his shoulders. "We have, Admiral. Earth rejects your terms." The alien's mandibles clicked faster. "Then you have chosen extinction. Your species had such potential, but you refused to accept your proper place in the cosmic hierarchy." "Perhaps," Thorn replied, "you should have considered that we don't believe in hierarchies. Humanity has faced extinction-level threats since. We crawled from the oceans. Every time we adapted, we survived." "Not this time," Dravex hissed. "Your planet is surrounded. Your technology is inferior. Your defiance is illogical." Thorn allowed himself a thin smile. "Logic is overrated, Admiral. It's passion that drives innovation." With a subtle nod to Keza, Thorn watched as she engaged the ship's quantum transmitter. The signal, just 3 encrypted words, raced outward to Earth's hidden defense grid. "Last chance, Admiral," Thorn said softly. "Withdraw your forces." Dravex's laughter echoed through the bridge. "You dare threaten the combined might of 17 spacefaring civilizations? This is why your kind cannot be allowed to spread. Your arrogance blinds you to reality." Thorn's eyes hardened. "No, Admiral. Your fear blinds you to ours." The transmission cut as the first explosions blossomed silently in the void. The Relentless shuddered as Earth's hidden planetary defense system activated, thousands of stealth satellites suddenly revealing themselves, firing concentrated particle beams at the Coalition fleet. "Project Nemesis is online," Keza announced. "Casualty projections?" Thorn watched dispassionately as the Coalition ships began to falter, caught completely by surprise. "It won't be enough," he said quietly, "but it will buy us time for phase 2. In the darkness of space, the battle for humanity's survival had begun, and the galaxy was about to learn why you should never corner a species that had evolved as prey, only to become the ultimate predator. "Shields failing on vectors 3 through 7. Lieutenant Keza's voice cut through the chaos as the Relentless absorbed another barrage from the Coalition flagship. Commander Thorne gripped the command chair as the ship lurched violently. Engage emergency protocols. Activate Prometheus protocol. The bridge crew exchanged glances. Prometheus was a last resort, a technology so controversial that its very existence had been classified at the highest levels. Sir, Strategic Officer Darius Riven objected, his prosthetic eye glowing faintly in the emergency lighting. Prometheus hasn't been field-tested. The risk is acceptable given the alternative. Thorne cut him off. Execute the command. Deep. Within the Relentless, quantum processors initiated a sequence that the best human scientists had developed in secret for over a decade. Coalition forces had destroyed 30% of Earth's defense grid, but they'd lost 17 capital ships in the process. Not enough, not nearly enough. On the main view screen, Admiral Dravex's ship approached Earth, surrounded by a protective flotilla. They're positioning for a planetary bombardment, Riven observed grimly. Thorne nodded. As expected. Status of Prometheus? Online in 60 seconds, Keza reported. But sir, once activated, we cannot guarantee. I'm well aware of the implications, Lieutenant. Thorne's voice was iron. Proceed. The ship's AI, Athena, spoke in its measured tones. Prometheus protocol activation requires command authentication. Authorization. Thorne Alpha 7 Epsilon 9. Authenticated. Warning. Prometheus activation will create localized spatial anomalies with unpredictable consequences. Understood, Thorne replied. Target Coalition command ships only. On Earth below, billions watched as the alien armada positioned itself for the killing stroke. Humanity's defiance had been brief but fierce, exactly as planned. They weren't meant to win this battle, merely to survive long enough for what came next. Prometheus active, Keza announced. Thorne leaned forward. Fire! From the relentless, invisible tendrils of quantum disruption reached out, targeting the 5 largest Coalition vessels. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then space itself appeared to fold around the alien ships, distorting their very structure at the subatomic level. By the stars, whispered Riven, watching as the Coalition flagship began to implode, crushed by localized gravitational forces that defied known physics. The Prometheus weapon didn't destroy ships in the conventional sense. It selectively altered fundamental forces around them, creating micro-singularities that collapsed inward with terrifying precision. Coalition fleet in disarray, Keza reported, unable to keep the awe from her voice. They're retreating from Prometheus range, but victory was premature. Even as the Coalition forces regrouped, 5 more battlecruisers dropped out of FTL on the far side of the moon. Reinforcements. They were prepared for resistance. Thorne noted grimly. How many more shots does Prometheus have? Keza's face fell. The system is already showing critical instability. One more activation risks a cascade failure. Thorne nodded slowly. Then we make it count. Target their new flagship. As the Relentless prepared for its final shot, emergency transmissions flooded in from Earth. Coalition landing craft had breached the atmosphere, targeting major population centers. Sir, Riven said quietly, we should consider implementing Thanatos Protocol. The bridge fell silent. Thanatos wasn't a weapon. It was a genocide switch, designed to ensure that if humanity fell, their conquerors would find nothing but a dead world. Not yet, Thorne decided. Earth still holds one more surprise. He opened a secure channel. General Evora, you are authorized to deploy the Guardians. On Earth's surface, buried silos beneath every major city began to open. The Coalition forces, expecting easy planetary subjugation, instead found themselves facing humanity's final line of defense. The biomechanical Guardians, fusion-powered war machines piloted by volunteer soldiers, neurally linked to their mechanical bodies. In orbit, the Relentless fired its last Prometheus shot, tearing apart 3 Coalition vessels caught in its quantum web. But the cost was immediate. Alarms blared as the ship's engines went critical. "Abandon ship," Thorne ordered calmly. "All personnel to escape pods." As the crew evacuated, Thorne remained on the bridge, plotting the Relentless's final course, a suicide run into the heart of the Coalition fleet. The real war for Earth had only just begun. General Lysandra Evora watched from the underground command center as her guardians emerged across the globe. Standing 30 meters tall, each biomechanical warrior represented the pinnacle of human ingenuity. Part machine, part genetically engineered organism, with a human pilot neurally interfaced at its core. Guardian units engaging hostiles in all theaters, reported Major Caden Nix, his hands flying over holographic controls. Coalition forces encountering heavy resistance in Shanghai, Nairobi, and Buenos Aires. Evora nodded grimly. The Guardians had been humanity's most closely guarded secret, developed not as weapons of conquest, but as a final line of defense. Each pilot knew they were likely embarking on a one-way mission. "Status of orbital assets?" she asked. "The Relentless..." Nix hesitated. "Gone, ma'am. Commander Thorne took out 3 more Coalition vessels in his final run." Evora closed her eyes briefly. Varric had been a friend, but she had no time for mourning, not with the fate of the species at stake. "Activate the Nexus," she ordered. "Full neural synchronization across all Guardian units." The Nexus was perhaps the most controversial aspect of the Guardian program, a quantum entanglement system that linked the minds of all pilots, creating a hive consciousness that could process battlefield information at superhuman speeds. It came with risks. Neural burnout was common after extended connection. Across Earth's surface, the tide began to turn. Coalition landing forces, expecting to find terrified civilians, instead encountered coordinated resistance from the Guardians. In orbit, the remnants of humanity's defense grid continued to exact a toll on the alien fleet. At Coalition Auxiliary, "Command!" Admiral Zex Callum watched in mounting horror as casualty reports flooded in. "Impossible," he hissed to his sub-commanders. "Their defense capacity was estimated at 1/10 of this. How did we miss these developments?" His intelligence. Officer Vrentor spoke hesitantly. "Admiral, we're detecting unusual energy signatures from the human war machines. They appear to be adapting to our weapons." This was the true power of the Guardians. With each engagement, the neural network learned, evolved, and transmitted tactical data across the entire defensive grid. Weapons that proved effective in Nairobi were rendered useless in Shanghai minutes later as the Guardian's molecular structure reconfigured. On a secure channel, Zex Kalim contacted the Coalition. "Council, we require immediate reinforcement. The humans have deployed technology beyond our intelligence estimates." The Council Elder's response was cold. "There will be no reinforcements, Admiral. You assured us this would be a simple pacification." "The situation has changed," Zex Kalim snarled. "Their weapons are evolving during combat. We've lost 40% of our landing force." "Then ensure the remaining 60% completes the mission," the Elder replied before terminating the connection. In the command center, Evora received troubling news. "Guardian pilots showing signs of neural strain," Nix reported. "Estimated cohesion time remaining, 3 hours." It wasn't enough. Despite their successes, the Guardians were outnumbered. Coalition forces had established footholds in less defended regions, and orbital bombardment continued to target critical infrastructure. "Activate the Lazarus Protocol," Evora ordered quietly. Nix paled. "General, the volunteers for Lazarus, they understood it was irreversible." "They did," Evora confirmed, "and they chose it anyway." Across the battlefield, a subset of Guardian units began to pulse with new energy as the Lazarus Protocol took effect. The human pilots inside surrendered the last barriers of their humanity, allowing their consciousness to fully merge with their biomechanical vessels. There would be no return for them, but their combat effectiveness doubled instantly. Mexico City Guardian pilot. Ilara Desh felt her physical body dissolve as her mind expanded through her 30-meter frame. Pain vanished. Fear vanished. She became the Guardian, a perfect synthesis of human consciousness and machine precision. The coalition troops facing her never stood a chance. As night fell across a burning Earth, humanity's defenders fought with the desperate fury of a species on the brink. And in laboratories deep beneath the Himalayas, a team of scientists worked feverishly to implement the final stage of humanity's survival plan, a contingency so radical that even most military leaders remained unaware of its existence. Project Genesis was about to change the rules of the war entirely. Dr. Orion Helios surveyed the sprawling underground complex beneath the Himalayas, watching as his team made final preparations for Project Genesis. Around him, quantum computers hummed, processing power equivalent to 1,000 traditional supercomputers focused on a single task, rewriting the rules of human evolution. Casualty reports suggest we have less than 48 hours before. Coalition forces locate this facility, reported his deputy, Dr. Zara Novak, her augmented eyes displaying scrolling data as she spoke. Helios nodded grimly. Then we accelerate the timeline, prepare the first batch of Genesis subjects. In secure chambers throughout the facility, 5,000 volunteers, soldiers, scientists, and civilians who had passed the genetic compatibility screening waited for a transformation from which there would be no return. Project Genesis represented the most radical response to the coalition threat. Targeted manipulation of human genetic code to activate dormant evolutionary potential. Decades of research into the human genome had revealed startling possibilities, abilities locked away by millions of years of evolution, deemed unnecessary by natural selection, but preserved in junk DNA. Now, facing extinction, humanity would unlock those dormant genes. "Sir," called one of the technicians, "General Evora is patching through from Central Command." Lysandra's hologram appeared, her face haggard from days without sleep. "Orion, the Guardian lines are collapsing in Europe and East Asia. Coalition forces have adapted countermeasures faster than anticipated. We need 12 more hours," Helios replied. "You have 6, Evora stated flatly. "After that, I can't guarantee the orbital shields will hold." When the transmission ended, Helios turned to Novak. "Begin the Genesis sequence immediately. All subjects." Throughout the facility, volunteers entered transformation chambers where nanobots would rewrite their DNA, activating dormant genetic sequences and introducing engineered improvements. The process was agonizing, cellular reconstruction at an accelerated pace. Not all would survive. Above ground, the war continued to rage. Despite heroic resistance, humanity's forces were being systematically destroyed. The Guardians fought valiantly, but for every coalition ship they destroyed, 2 more took its place. Earth's cities burned, its population centers devastated. In orbit, Admiral Zex Kalim finally allowed himself to feel satisfaction. "The human resistance is faltering. Commence final bombardment of their military installations." His second-in-command, however, looked troubled. "Admiral, our ground forces are reporting unusual energy signatures from a region in the mountains. Possible hidden facility." "Target it immediately," Zex Kalim ordered. "No survivors." As coalition warships repositioned to target the Himalayan, complex alarm systems blared throughout the Genesis facility. "They've found us," Novak announced. "Orbital bombardment incoming in approximately 4 minutes." Helios surveyed the transformation chambers. The first batch of Genesis subjects had completed only 70% of their metamorphosis, not enough time for full genetic integration. "Release the chambers," he ordered. "Everyone who can move, evacuate to the surface." But the transformations aren't complete, Novak protested. "The genetic changes could be unstable." "Better unstable than dead," Helios retorted. "This facility won't survive a direct hit." As the chambers opened, those inside emerged transformed. Some collapsed immediately, their bodies rejecting the changes. Others stood tall, their physiology altered in subtle and profound ways, enhanced. Strength, accelerated healing, heightened senses. A few displayed more dramatic changes. Skin that could deflect energy weapons, eyes that could see across the electromagnetic spectrum. Rylan Frost, formerly a marine biologist, examined his hands, as bioluminescent patterns pulsed beneath his skin. Beside him, ex-soldier Mira Vantis tested her new reflexes, moving with inhuman speed. "Get them to the surface," Helios ordered, as the first tremors from orbital bombardment shook the facility. "They're humanity's last hope now." As the Genesis subjects reached the mountain's surface, they faced coalition ground forces advancing on the facility. What followed was humanity's first demonstration of its new evolutionary path. Miravantis moved like lightning, her enhanced musculature and nervous system allowing her to close the distance to coalition soldiers before their targeting systems could lock on. Rylan Frost discovered his bioluminescence could generate electromagnetic pulses that disabled coalition technology. Others manifested unique abilities. Some could manipulate kinetic energy, others found they could communicate telepathically, coordinating attacks with unprecedented precision. The coalition forces, expecting conventional resistance, found themselves facing something entirely new. Human beings who had transcended their evolutionary limitations. As the Genesis subjects engaged the enemy, Dr. Helios remained behind to initialize the facility's final protocol. He would not survive, but the data from this first combat engagement would be transmitted to similar facilities around the world. The next generation of Genesis subjects would be even more formidable. Humanity had stopped running. Admiral Zex Kalim stared at the battlefield reports in disbelief. Coalition forces retreating across multiple fronts, their advanced weaponry proving increasingly ineffective against the transformed humans emerging from hidden facilities worldwide. "This cannot be happening," he hissed. "How are they adapting so quickly?" His tactical officer, visibly shaken, displayed holographic footage from the Himalayan engagement. "The humans appear to have evolved. Their biological signatures are still recognizably human, but with significant modifications. Each group seems to manifest different adaptations, often specifically countering our tactical advantages." In the 6 weeks since the first Genesis subjects had emerged, the tide of war had shifted dramatically. Coalition landing forces, once advancing confidently across Earth's surface, now found themselves isolated and hunted. The transformed humans, now calling themselves the Evolved, demonstrated capabilities that defied conventional military response. Indeed, North America, evolved squads led by Rylan Frost had developed ways to disrupt coalition communications using bioelectric fields generated by their modified nervous systems. In Africa, Mira Vantis commanded forces whose enhanced speed and strength made them nearly impossible to target with standard weapons. Most concerning to the coalition command was the apparent continuing evolution. Each generation of Genesis subjects emerged more adapted than the last, as if humanity had compressed thousands of years of evolution into weeks. On Earth, in a reclaimed command center beneath the ruins of Sydney, the leaders of the human resistance gathered. General Evora, one of the few high-ranking military officials who had refused Genesis transformation, addressed the assembled evolved commanders. "We've pushed coalition forces back to their initial landing zones," she reported. "Their orbital superiority is now their only advantage. Nixon Valerian, formerly a quantum physicist before his transformation, had given him the ability to perceive and manipulate probability fields, stepped forward. His eyes, now with pupils that constantly shifted like kaleidoscopes, focused on the tactical display. Their command structure is fracturing, he observed. Interspecies tensions within the coalition are surfacing as their losses mount. This was another unexpected development. The Galactic Coalition, once united in its determination to subjugate humanity, was showing signs of internal conflict. Several member species had withdrawn their forces, citing the unexpectedly high casualties. "What about Project Ascension?" asked Mira Vantis, her enhanced metabolism causing her skin to shimmer slightly with excess energy. General Evora hesitated. "Dr. Novak reports it's ready, but the risks are considerable." Project Ascension represented the most radical stage of humanity's evolutionary response, a unified consciousness that would link all evolved individuals into a gestalt entity capable of coordinated action across the planet. Unlike the limited neural linking of the Guardian pilots, Ascension would create a true hive mind while preserving individual identity. "We need to end this," Rylan Frost stated firmly. "Every day the Coalition maintains orbital control, more civilians die." The decision was made. Within hours, all surviving, evolved on Earth participated in the first Ascension event. The experience was unlike anything humans had previously conceived. Thousands of minds connected yet distinct, sharing knowledge, tactics, and perception across a planetary network. In orbit, Coalition sensors detected the massive energy surge as Ascension activated. "What are they doing now?" Zex Kalim demanded. His science officer had no answer, but the effects became apparent moments later. The scattered evolved resistance suddenly began operating with perfect coordination. Coalition ground forces found themselves outmaneuvered at every turn, facing enemies who seemed to anticipate their every move. More alarmingly, some evolved began demonstrating limited telekinetic abilities, the collective mental energy of the Ascension network manifesting in physical ways. Coalition energy shields faltered under concentrated telekinetic assault. Ships in low orbit reported critical system failures as their electronics were scrambled by directed psionic energy. "Retreat," Zex Kalim finally ordered. "All forces disengage and return to orbit immediately." But retreat proved difficult. Coalition extraction ships found their navigation systems compromised, their pilots experiencing hallucinations induced by the Ascension network. In the Sydney Command Center, the evolved leadership experienced the battle through thousands of eyes simultaneously. Through their shared consciousness, they sensed the Coalition's fear and its determination to end the threat permanently. "They're positioning for a final bombardment," Nixon warned, his probability sense allowing him to see the Coalition's decision tree unfolding. "They intend to sterilize the planet rather than risk these evolutionary adaptations spreading to the stars." General Evora's face hardened. "Then we strike first. Initiate Operation Starburst. Across Earth, hidden launch. Facilities activated. Humanity's last-ditch weapons, relativistic kill vehicles equipped with Prometheus technology, rocketed toward the Coalition fleet. The galaxy was about to learn why cornering humanity had been the Coalition's fatal mistake. The Coalition Council chamber fell silent as Admiral Zex Kalim's final transmission played for the 17th time. "They're everywhere. The kill vehicles have Prometheus tech. Our shields are useless. The humans have infiltrated our system somehow. They're in our minds. Tell the homeworlds to prepare. They won't stop with our fleet. May the cosmic harmony forgive us for what we've unleashed." The transmission ended with the destruction of the Coalition flagship, along with 80% of their armada. The remaining vessels had scattered, many commandeered by evolved infiltrators who had used the Ascension network to project their consciousnesses across space, taking control of Coalition ships through sheer mental dominance. Elder Zath Vren, of the Morrigan Collective, the most ancient member of the Coalition, addressed the stunned council. We have committed the ultimate strategic error. We identified humanity as a potential threat and, in trying to eliminate them, forced them to become exactly what we feared. On the view screen, sensor data showed the surviving coalition vessels changing course, not retreating to their respective homeworlds, but forming a defensive perimeter around Earth. Except they weren't coalition ships anymore. They were now humanity's vanguard. How did we misread them so profoundly? Asked Counselor Tazurine of the Velgarian Unity. We assessed them as we would assess ourselves, Elder Zathvren replied. But humans evolved under conditions none of our species experienced. While we developed in environments that favored stability and specialization, Earth was chaos, constant disasters, climate shifts, predator-prey cycles. Humans never stopped evolving because their world never allowed them to. The strategic error was now painfully obvious. The coalition attack had not broken humanity. It had accelerated their development, compressing millennia of potential evolution into months of desperate adaptation. What emerged was something the galaxy had never seen. On Earth, the first post-war Council of Humanity convened. Unlike before the invasion, this wasn't a gathering of political leaders, but a meeting of evolutionary branches, representatives from each Genesis lineage that had emerged during the conflict. General Evora, still unmodified but respected as one of humanity's saviors, addressed the assembly. We've secured our world, but the question remains, what now? Nixon Valerian, his probability-shifting abilities now refined enough to glimpse possible futures, spoke first. The coalition is fracturing. 7 member species have already sent envoys requesting separate peace negotiations. And the others? Asked Rylan Frost, whose bioelectric abilities had evolved to the point where he could interface directly with technology. Preparing for war, Mira Vantis answered. Her enhanced senses could now detect transmissions from across the solar system. They fear what we've become. The truth hung heavy in the chamber. Humanity had transformed itself into exactly what the coalition had feared, an adaptable, rapidly evolving species with abilities that bordered on the impossible. The evolved could interface with technology, project their consciousness across space, manipulate energy fields, and coordinate perfectly through the Ascension network. Some had developed abilities that defied conventional physics. We have 3 options, said Elara Desh, one of the former Guardian pilots who had survived the Lazarus Protocol, her consciousness now housed in a partly mechanical, partly biological form. Isolation, coexistence, or expansion. Isolation meant cutting Earth off from galactic affairs, focusing inward on rebuilding. Coexistence meant attempting diplomatic reconciliation with the coalition remnants. Expansion meant taking humanity's place among the stars, by force if necessary. The debate lasted for days. In the end, a 4th path emerged. 1 month later, representatives from 23 galactic civilizations, some former coalition members, others independent powers, gathered on Luna to hear humanity's decision. Dr. Zara Novak, now the elected voice of humanity, addressed the assembled dignitaries. You came to Earth believing us a threat to galactic stability, she began. You were not entirely wrong. Human potential, unchecked, could indeed have disrupted the balance of power. But your attack forced us to embrace that potential centuries before we might have naturally evolved these capabilities. The alien representatives shifted uncomfortably. We offer neither surrender nor conquest, Novak continued. Instead, we propose integration. The genesis process that transformed humanity can be adapted for other species, a controlled evolutionary advancement under careful ethical guidelines. We offer to share this technology to help guide other species toward their own evolutionary potential. The proposal was revolutionary and deeply controversial. Some species recoiled at the idea of artificially accelerating their evolution. Others saw opportunity. And if we refuse? Asked the representative of the militant Krell Dominion. Nixon Valerian stepped forward, his kaleidoscope eyes shifting as he surveyed probability lines. That would be unfortunate. Our predictive models suggest any civilization that chooses to remain hostile to humanity has a 97% chance of collapse within 50 years. It wasn't a threat, merely a statement of calculated fact. The galaxy had changed irrevocably. Humanity, once considered primitive newcomers, had vaulted to the apex of the evolutionary ladder. They had transformed from prey to predators in a single generation, but with the wisdom to understand the responsibility that came with such power. As the galactic representatives departed to consult with their governments, Earth continued its renaissance. The scars of war were healing as transformed humans used their abilities to restore the environment and rebuild civilization. In orbit, the first ships of humanity's new fleet prepared for departure, not warships, but exploration vessels crewed by evolved specialists eager to make peaceful contact with distant civilizations beyond the Coalition's borders. Among them was the UES Renaissance, commanded by Varric Thorn, not dead after all, but transformed in the final moments before the Relentless's destruction, his consciousness preserved and transferred to a new Genesis-enhanced body. Standing on the bridge, Thorn surveyed his crew, humans of various evolutionary branches working in perfect harmony, their diverse abilities complementing each other. "Set course for the Andromeda Arm," he ordered. "Let's introduce ourselves properly this time." As the Renaissance engaged its newly developed quantum drive, technology reverse-engineered from Coalition ships and enhanced by human innovation, Earth receded behind them. Humanity had survived its greatest challenge not by conquering its enemies, but by transcending its limitations. The apex predators of the galaxy had emerged from the crucible of war not as conquerors, but as guides to a new evolutionary frontier. Those who had sought to extinguish humanity had instead ignited its transformation, and in doing so, changed the destiny of all sentient life. The stars awaited.